come the winter, if that's the case, by the way, the prices are going to go up. They're not going to come down, even though the cost of gas has actually come down. The energy companies are going to keep the prices high in order to make profit. Now, you might have heard this week, Boris Johnson deciding on yet another U-turn that now suddenly he's going to put a tax, a windfall tax, on the energy companies. He's been telling us this couldn't be done. Now suddenly they can do it. And you know why? To save his skin. Because everybody will know that Boris Johnson and his Tory cronies have been taking the piss out of everybody on these streets. For the last 2 years, we've been through a pandemic. We've had a lockdown. We've had a situation where people can... Oh, I'm sorry about that. We've got an idiot here. The fact is, people have lost loved ones. They couldn't see their relatives. They've spent 2 years in lockdown. You were told if you even had a gathering of 3 or 4 people, you could be fined £10,000. And yet now the pictures are emerging, the evidence that the Tories, they were having it great, weren't they? They were having parties. They were getting pissed at your expense, while the rest of us were told we've got to stay in the house and not meet people. I tell you what, I've been doing this for a long time, but I'm lost for words to describe this bunch of gangsters who are running this country. And by the way, when they go on about the cost of living crisis, do you think for 1 second the Tories, the rich, worry about the bills? When you get your notice of how much your gas and electricity is going up, you worry, can I afford it? Do you think the rich worry about their bills? To the hell. Boris Johnson's never had to worry about a bill in his life. A little rich Tory boy who thinks working class people are scum. But he'll come up to Stockton to try to give the impression he's one of you. He's not one of us. He's part of the elite. He's part of those people at the top of society who have never had it so good, while the rest of us are struggling. And when you talk about a cost of living crisis, I tell you, I'm old enough to remember the 1970s, when we had inflation, high inflation, when people were worried. But I tell you this, you didn't have old age pensioners then worrying whether or not they could keep themselves warm. Not like today. How many people here can afford to pay another £300 or £400 a month for gas and electricity? And the money they're offering, this £400, it's not going to help the vast majority of people, because that might pay 1 month. 1 month. What about the rest? It's not even going to be targeted or given to everybody. It's not as if ordinary working people are going to be helped. Well, there's one way they can sort out the energy crisis. They can take back into public ownership the energy companies without any compensation. Any compensation. Sack every single one of those chief executives and then cut the prices. Cut the prices. In fact, they should go further. My view's a simple one. Old age pensioners have paid tax and national insurance all their life. They should get their heating free. Why not? Why not? They've worked all the bloody life. They're entitled not to worry about keeping themselves warm. But I'll tell you this, the rich don't ever worry about that, do they? They never worry about it. They never worry about bills. They never them worry about their jobs, but they tell us we're all in the same boat. We're not in the same boat as the Tories. You're not in the same boat as multi-millionaires. You can't just, decide one day, I'm going to live in this house or that house, move abroad. You're stuck here because you're in a country run by gangsters. Gangsters, that's what these people are. Well, I know one thing. They'll try everything they can to save their skins, won't they? Everything. That's all they'll do. They'll try to deflect blame away from themselves. You had that idiot a minute ago saying, oh, it's all down to the war in Ukraine. Really? Is that true, is it? Is it true that the bills are being put up for the war? No, they're not. These price rises were already pre-planned. They just want to screw you even further. That's what they want to do. And you know what they're trying to do as well? They're trying to recoup the money that they had to pay out during the pandemic. And they're trying to make you pay for it. And ordinary people are going to suffer like never before. I mean, in some ways, Johnson's quite fortunate because the increases in the prices for gas and electricity are coming at the time when people may be able to turn the heating off. That's if you don't live in Gateshead where I live, because you have the heating on all year. But what happens in the winter? What happens in the winter when people cannot pay? When they cannot turn the heating on? What happens then? What happens when people can't afford the most basic essentials of life? We will see thousands of people, especially vulnerable people, especially old age pensioners, dying. What type of world is that? Where old age pensioners who pay taxes and national insurance all their lives can't even afford to keep themselves warm. But the rich are getting richer by the day. There's no panic for the Tories and their big business backers, not at all. But I'll tell you what's great, is that there is resistance. And you know, the reason that Boris Johnson this week had to announce a windfall tax is because of the pressure that they're under. 60% of people think he should resign. Even some of his own MPs are now saying he's got to go. Well, he has to go. But not just him, the whole lot of them. Every single one of those Tory bastards have got to go. They've been shitting on you. They're taking a piss out of you. They laugh at you. They regard you as nothing. That's it. That's what they do. Do you think when they have the parties in Downing Street, do you think they're not laughing at people in Stockton, in Middlesbrough, in Redcar? When they announce the closure of a factory, when they throw people on the door, do you think the Tories worry? Go to hell. They couldn't give a toss. But one thing's for certain, we ain't going to let them get away with it. What I think is fantastic is that the unions, the trade unions that represent ordinary people are starting to say, we have had enough. Our members, the people we serve, are not going to take this anymore. And we're going to go out and strike. The real workers balloting for action. Why? Because of thousands of job cuts in essential safety. We should support them. The Communication Workers Union balloting for action. Standing up for their members. That's what unions are about. They're about resisting, fighting and organising for us, our class. Now I'm from North East Against Racism. We campaign against all forms of racism, discrimination and oppression. We understand that racism is used to divide and rule. We know that the plans from the likes of Priti Patel to send refugees to Rwanda is nothing more than a cheap attempt to play to what she thinks is the racist gallery. That's what it's about. The Tories want to play the race card when they're in trouble. Blame somebody else. It's always somebody else's fault, never theirs. Well, we're not going to take that. We're not accepting that. I'm proud to come down here. I was proud to speak at Red Card the other week. Because this is what we need more of. And all the people who are listening, get yourself involved. It's your life, your fight, your family. You're affected by this. You're not just onlookers. You're not just people who stand around and listen. You've got a role to play in changing this society. You know, when I was growing up, my man, who was born in 1930, used to tell me, you'll have things we didn't have. You'll have decent health care. You'll have dentistry, eye checks. You'll have all of that for now. You'll be able to go to university, which I couldn't. You'll have things their generation didn't have. You know what it is? I can't say that now to my daughter. I can't tell my daughter, you'll have things that I didn't have, apart from austerity and endless crisis. I was able to go to university for now. In the days when we had free education, that's gone. That's gone. Our NHS being ripped to pieces. And I worked for the NHS for 25 years. 25 years. Proudly working for the National Health Service. And when you look at it today, what the Tories have done, privatised it, cut it back. You can hardly get any services now for mental health in Newcastle, Gateshead or Tyneside, and I bet it's the same round here as well. People thrown onto the streets who need help and should be getting help, but they're not. So everything is wrong about the way in which the rich are running this country. Everything is wrong. And what we've got to do is come together. We've got to come together and organise, resist, fight back, use a bit of the spirit that we have amongst our class to say we've had enough. Make the rich pay for their crisis. Now the People's Assembly and the trade unions are going to have a demonstration on June the 18th. I know that there's transport going from this area. Get yourself on it. Let's make sure that that's a massive demonstration, a huge demonstration. But demonstrations aren't enough. We need more than demonstrations. We need strikes. We need people. When people are threatened with being disconnected, we need the community to rally around those people and prevent the disconnection and stand in solidarity with them. We've got to appeal to the gas and electricity workers. Do not disconnect people, because you're disconnecting your own. So everybody who's listening, this rally here today is about you. It's about your rights. It's about your life. It's about whether or not you'll be able to afford to keep yourself warm, keep yourself alive in the winter. We've got inflation running away. We've got job cuts. We've got price increases. And we've got Boris Johnson laughing all the way to his bank because he thinks people like you don't understand that he's responsible. And he ruffles his hair, doesn't he? Gives the impression he doesn't know what he's doing. Oh, he's a bumbling fella. He's now going to do stuff. He is only making these promises now because he has to. That's all it's about. So I'll just finish with this. We want a better world. A world where people don't have to worry about the essentials in life. Why should they? Why should they? We want a society where the elderly, the sick, the vulnerable are looked after, are cared for. Where our kids get a decent education. Where workers are treated with dignity and respect. Where they have decent wages, decent conditions. You know, people say, we don't want to go back to the 70s. What was wrong with the 70s? We used to have jobs. trade union rights, decent social services, a fully funded NHS. Tell you what, I'd like to go back to the 70s if this is what we've got to look forward to. So get involved, don't just listen, organise. Get involved in the groups round here. Get involved in North East Against Racism. Unite together, and together we have the power to make Boris Johnson history.